Good day and welcome to this episode of Civitas Buzz. It is the 12th of September 2025 and we have a pretty awesome agenda in store. We've got some highlights emerging from events, both the online and in-person events in Joburg and Cape Town. Paul is going to come to us with a new installment this time around called the CEO Playbook Corner, where he's going to share some things about effective CEO habits. And we're going to get a little bit of the scoop on what's happening in AI, because no Civitas Buzz episode would probably be good without a little dive into AI. So stay tuned, and great to have you listening in. Please feel free to engage and leave comments and keep the conversation going afterwards. So as we're going to dive in, guys, Stacey Brewer was a huge highlight for you guys up in Joburg this last week. Please share a little bit of what are the key takeouts from that awesome event.
I mean, from my side, George, just wow, if South Africa had another 1,000 Stacey Brewers, it would be a different country. Such an incredible story. Went to Gibbs, did a MBA there, did a thesis on low-cost schools, realized the education was a disaster. Hustles, launches the schools, now raise hundreds of millions. They employ 1,500 people, 26 schools, 18,000 learners. Going to double that in the next year. So incredible. And then the results are outperforming those of Kuro, outperforming the government stuff. They can often get in kids that are in sort of grade 8 who are at sort of grade 4 level and get them a university exemption matric. It's like unbelievable. And it's profitable as well. So yeah, just a super inspiring story. And I think just speaks to the idea that, like, if you're willing to take on and try to tackle the hard problems in South Africa and do a good job with a clever business model, you can do amazing things. I think you saw Capitec's done the same thing, Time Bank. So yeah, taking on these big problems in the country and clever business models around them, it's just super cool.
Yeah, maybe to add on just a few comments. What's quite interesting is you often hear this term of founder market fit. And what was quite interesting with Stacey was that she had no educational background before starting an educational institution. It's like just the daunting task of even thinking of starting that with all the regulations and curriculums and everything else that you have to abide by. And I think they launched in about 2013, and she just mentioned she went on quite a interesting discovery journey globally to see how these low-cost, affordable, high-quality schooling systems were working, and to bring that back here. What is also quite interesting is how they get a lot of their scholars to adopt the values of the organization, of Spark Schools, and they have like a little ritual every morning that they do across all the schools. And it just got me reflecting on, how can you further embed the value adoption within your business. And the last point, which is also quite interesting, was she went from co-founder to CEO, and as of quite recently, she's now the chair of the company. And one of the questions we asked her was, what was required within that transition? And you could just see how excited she is about a new role, recognizing that she wasn't the right person to take the business to the next stage. She wasn't interested in doing and running API reviews all the time. She wanted to be doing the impactful, the building stuff, and looking at cross-border expansion. The thing that really excited her, and it was certainly a lesson left there around how do you also spend your time where it gives you the most pleasure, not spend it where you think the business is.
Yeah, it's epic. Wow, what a proud South African ambassador example. Yeah, I had her on a education podcast some years ago and was blown over then. And she's gone on and built on it year on year. A similar and awesome story we had from David Duarte in Cape Town. So he was in the early days of the whole blogging movement in South Africa. At the time when blogging hit SA, he and a couple of others were at the center of it and kind of leading that movement. And they then built Cerebro, which was his agency at the time, on the back of that. did super well, exited out of there, and he's had a numerous other interests since then, and actually turned his career towards more impact-based and brand story overlap, to the point of, how do you create a story that can generate a huge change in sentiment or movement? And one of the stories he told was working with Lewis Pugh, the swimmer, in their whole effort to have portions of the North Sea, I think it is, declared a marine reserve, requiring alignment with Europe, Russia, America, and he said, those kinds of things started to make sort of any efforts in doing FMCG advertising sort of feel a lot less meaningful for him. But it was just such an awesome story. Right early on, one of the members asked him kind of like a question. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it basically had him talking almost within the first few minutes about the 4 times in his career that he's had a wipeout, and how so much of it was around almost like personal relationship with some other people, or his own kind of overconfidence or whatever it was. So it was incredible to share and hear that over 20 years, that story. And now, he's doing some epic work with Tree Shake in 20 odd years later in AI, and like it's just a long history in being at the forefront of sort of digital revolution. So it was an awesome evening, and one to remember for the guys in Cape Town and ladies in Cape Town. So that was David Duarte, and just reconnected us with the power of story. I think it was and StoryBrand, the StoryBrand methodology, which many of you have come across, was one that he referenced and other members really liked. So that's a little thread to follow up on. Guys, what other events were highlights for you guys in the last couple of weeks?
So we had an epic online session with Felix Norton from WoW. He spent the last 6 months, he's an SEO studio, or they're a full stack agency, but with a big focus on SEO, and they put obviously all of their focus on GEO or LLM SEO or whatever you want to call it. But the new version is how do you basically get your business to get recommended in chatbot answers. And it was just fascinating where that's going. I think sort of to summarize it is that SEO is definitely not dead. It's a lot of the same stuff, just being all over the web, basically putting out content that is designed to help these LLMs read and position you in the way you want to be positioned. So it's really, really important to be actually getting out blog posts where you're doing comparisons, you're explaining how you differentiate it. So when people are asking those answers in clear language, you're showing up the way you want to show up. And then I think it's also blogging is back, and then traditional media. So they're obviously they're going to wait. They wait the magazines, and they wait certain podcasts, and they wait traditional media quite heavily. So it's now becoming quite important for good old traditional PR to ensure that you are being recommended. And then obviously the final one is online reviews. So basically ensuring lots of online reviews in different places, because it's going to then amalgamate all of those different things, and that's what's going to spit out the answer. So ensuring you've got all your blogs done, lots of traditional media, lots of online reviews, and that'll basically feed into how you get shown up in that GEO.
Aggregated social proof, by the sounds of things.
Yeah, it's just instead of now one data point top of Google, you got to have 20 data points, and you got to be winning on all of them.
Fun. Okay, great. Just in case guys weren't feeling like they had enough to do. That's actually awesome. And then guys, let's get into Paul. Brett, if you've got anything from your experience this last while that stood out, please share.
Yeah, look, I haven't actually been to a lot of events the last couple of weeks because I've been on leave for a bit, and I'm in the middle of a move at the moment.
Where do you go when you're on leave and when you're in Mauritius? Do you go somewhere cold, or how does it work?
Yeah, we went to a resort for a few days. They actually We haven't done a lot of resorts being here. Obviously, we just feel, if we want to go to the beach, we go to the beach. We step outside and go to the beach. But we decided to just do another little trip to a resort for a few days. My daughter's visiting from the UK because she's studying there, so she's been here for a month. But I've been doing quite a lot of reading. One article that was sent out a couple of weeks back, actually, by Simon Ellis, was an article on high agency by George Mack. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's a 30-minute read. It's quite interestingly presented with lots of little videos and examples in between. And I just thought it was really one of the best sort of a high-level presentations of an idea that I've seen in a while. And besides from just the presentation, like the actual content of it's really, really good. Often we say we've got lots of terminology to try and sort of describe the types of people we want to work with. We talk about A players, we talk about good operators, we talk about hustlers, we talk about, that guy's great, or that person's amazing, or she's excellent, she's not, whatever it is. And it's difficult to sort of articulate what it is we try to get to there. He refines high agency people down to 3 core ideas, and he uses slightly different terminology. But what it basically comes down to is clarity, autonomy, and action. Clarity being sort of a clarity of thought, autonomy being disagreeableness, like the ability to sort of go against the grain, and obviously then like a bias for action. And he just goes through those really nicely and clear. I thought it was a great article.
Awesome,
a couple
guys.
of other good reads, but yeah.
Go check that out. If your people domain is leaving an opportunity out there, or you're presented with a challenge, that might be an awesome lens to look through as you're kind of scaling on the people front. Great. Paul, give it to us. I think it's time for the CEO Playbook Review Corner, looking at effective CEO habits. So what's the golden source on that front?
So, George, where we've gone with the CEO Playbook is initially we must have had 500 one-pages, and we still do, of all the common challenges that came up in scaling a business from sort of 5 employees to sort of 300 employees. And what we find is that people were often getting overwhelmed in these sessions. There were just too many ideas. So what we've done is we've really tried to simplify it down to a few things that you do that are the 80-20 and really are done by most of the best founders and entrepreneurs in the world. So we've now got 30 basically core tools. So I'll talk you through one of the ones that we've developed, which is we call the Weekly Founder One-on-One. And that's the idea that it's taken from this concept we came up with called Think Time, which is if you look at people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, a lot of the top founders, they take some time away to think about the business and think strategically as opposed to being operational all the time. And the idea of a weekly one-on-one is you schedule an hour a week where you, on your own, are thinking through what are the big challenges in the business, how did the week go, how are you going to solve those challenges, what are the big risks, and then what are your top priorities as a CEO for the week, and making sure that you have those scheduled in your calendar each week. So we've tried to simplify 4 or 5 common habits of really good CEOs into that 1 hour session where you can just make it a weekly recurring one-on-one and hopefully start doing a bunch of things that are going to move the needle in your business.
Cool. You're keeping us on tenterhooks for what's next, but that is a massive one, and I've definitely seen that sort of rippling a little bit through the network, guys challenging each other to do that 1 hour a week or that 1 day a month. That was something that one of the members I chatted to this last week, that despite lots going on, he's taking 1 day a month to just not do any work on that day and just try and take stock. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And now let's get on to we always like to have a lens on AI. And Ryan, I want you to share, please, what you were sharing with us before around what you're seeing around capital allocation and AI.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, George. So it's been an interesting year in South Africa, and part of the whispers on the ground is that the year got off to a pretty quick start, but things seem to taper off. around start of Q2 odd, and traditionally posts like from Q2, Q3 onwards, the sun starts coming out and people start getting excited that December's coming soon, and there's a shift towards a sense of urgency. And what a lot of founders I've been chatting to recently have been complaining about is that that sense of urgency hasn't arrived yet. It's now middle of September, like when's it happening? They got proposals out, still no word for months, just nothing's moving. And there's a sense of frustration coming through, and the big question is why? What's going on? But at the same point in time, you speak to some other industry players, like the entertainment industry, super busy. AI consultancies, super busy. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot, and one of the potential reasons in the situation that I can infer might be that there's this requirement now for budget allocation into AI. And there's a good possibility that that budget just never existed before this AI wave came, and really has infiltrated the way that it has in the short time that it has. So are companies potentially withdrawing budget from other allocations that they previously had and reapplying it or reassigning it, and are figuring out how they can play within each function and department of the business. So don't know what the answer is, but there's certainly a level of frustration on one side and waiting on one side, and on the other side there is a lot of movement. So we'd love to hear if you guys have been coming across anything similar or have any thoughts you'd like to part in the topic.
I mean, I'd be interested to know, I mean, if that's the case, like where's that budget coming from? Are you seeing it come from like the sort of traditional ICT budget or IT budget? Or
So
who,
funnily,
is there any particular...
A lot of the marketing guys, and also there could also be a suspicion that the marketing outsource requirements have potentially been diluted because guys are making use of tools for $30 a month that could give them 80% of the output. So it definitely seems to be in the marketing space. There are some guys in the development space. So it's more on the traditional service offerings, at least from my view.
I mean, marketing budget's often an early casualty of any sort of reallocation. So that could be just seen as a luxury at this point, maybe.
Well, it's hard to get around the sort of the FUD sort of encapsulated in the idea that in a couple of years' time, you've got businesses that have properly leveraged AI, and then you don't have any other businesses because they just haven't done that. It's hard to kind of argue with that at this point. Just the promise of the productivity gains are just massive, and like we've had the first wave now of individual productivity with LLMs, but the agentic wave now is coming on thick. Now instead of I've been looking at outbound automations on Expandy for LinkedIn, and that's cool, and that's cool. But you get your database from Apollo and your thing from Expandy, and then you've still got to do a bunch of stuff yourself. But now a lot of these tools are almost getting amalgamated into one software as a service with an agentic team, pre-programmed with like 35 agents under one subscription, where previous things were before. And so like the I came across another platform the other day called Co-Founder, where it's basically like 100 agents under one roof, and it's all just sort of where are we consolidating and storing our data, so that we get to really benefit from this change. But it's happening so unbelievably fast. I mean, I'm on a training course at the moment, a go-to-market training course, and the tools we were talking about 2 months ago, the guy just said, sorry about those tools. I don't recommend using those anymore. Rather use these. This is the sort of a specialist. So I think you're right, Ryan. I think people are looking for these few dollars a month alternatives to paying big bucks for services. But yeah, AI needs to take a lot of the capital allocation. So, yeah. So, anyone else want to add anything on the AI front?
Can I just add one more comment there? One more comment on that to just close that topic.
Yeah.
I mean, the one, not to make it doomy, but gloomy, but the one concern there is, if budgets are being cut for traditional service providers in South Africa and they're making use of these international tools, like, that money is not coming back here. And then further to that, like, there's just been a lot of companies that have just got rid of junior devs, right? Which I think we mentioned last time as well. So now you're sitting with like this excess supply of like good quality candidate for employment, and money local budget being reduced and money shipping offshore. Like, it's quite interesting to see how this is all going to play out. And I'm sure there will be other problems and other job opportunities, that come out of it. But there's certainly going to be some, impact on the local market for sure. And this probably is a start to it.
On a counterpoint, one of our accounting businesses represented in Cape Town, they employ about 60 odd people, and they apply each year to their CETA, the financial services CETA, and they get a rebate for every graduate they employ, and they actually recover a fair whack of money most years. So it's worth people knowing about that, that there are some balancing forces out there to take advantage of. But yeah, now let's turn to some of the top items coming out of the forums, guys. Often it's forums that we really get into the bowels, let's say, of people's challenges. It's not the superficial things; it's the stuff that they really want to go a bit deeper on and crack in their businesses over a period of months. Paul, what have you been noticing on the forum front that's emerging on your side?
So George, we've had a couple of sessions just around burnout recently, and I think that's a common one where the big idea is that to build 100 or a few $100 million rand business, unless you are the top 0.01, it's like a 10 to 30 year journey. You look at all of those forums, which are the 50 million, 100 million plus. How long have you been in your business? 8 years, 12 years, 15 years. And I think that during those stressful times, what can happen is people basically overcommit. They stop taking holidays. They're working long hours. There's a lot of stress. And basically, what are the ways you bounce back from burnout, get your sleep in order, and basically get re-energized about the business? Has been sort of one of the common topics that's actually come up this month.
We had a member who genuinely fell out of love with his business. He even tried to employ a CEO, which worked in some respects but didn't in others. And because it didn't, he kind of needs to go back into his business resentfully. And then he went through this mindset shift, which he now can speak to like such a degree of gratefulness about his business. He's kind of realized, like, flip, man, this business actually is such a big part of my life, and he just started looking at it differently, and being grateful for the challenges that he does get to address and solve within the business, and kind of got all zen about it. And he said it's really made a huge difference. So that was kind of a cool story. But something else coming from my side, and I'd be curious of your guys' opinion on this, is just the whole thing of, like, one of the members, again, to your thing, is like, he's been at it for 8 years. He hasn't given himself like a meaningful raise in a few years. It's going to take an intense amount of growth effort to take this business in the next 3 or 4 years. And at some point he's feeling like, I want to start seeing myself starting to almost earn a material amount more to really make this journey worth it, and have my life be actually changed by the success that's happening here. But he's confronted with some of the challenges around, what's good for the business, what's good for the balance of, of reinvestment versus dividends, and also the ethical side. He's got co-founders. They don't have the same personal pressures or needs. Yeah, I'm just curious. What have you guys seen on this front to guide someone like that who's a bit more further along in their journey and looking to really start paying themselves properly?
So, George, I think one of them is that the first thing I think to look at would be having some kind of personal plan. So we had John St. Pierre, a chap who's built $200 million businesses in America, come and chat. And the big mistake he made in his first business is he started with a business plan. And the second that resulted in that business, he ended up getting kicked out as CEO. He gave up too much equity, and then basically he had someone who was a bit dodgy come in as the CEO and basically then politically work him out of the business. And he then, his second business, he started with a life plan first. Like, what are my, like what is the ideal lifestyle? And then basically built a business that would enable him to live out that that sort of what he called his personal North Star plan. And I think that's sometimes gets lost, where it just becomes all about the business. And actually what you want to do is start with, what do you want as the founder? From like basically a lifestyle perspective and an earning perspective, and then building a business that can help you fulfill those goals.
And what does that take to place yourself above the business? Because the risk is, of course, there's kind of like a selfishness message that kicks in there. Brett, I know you had some views on this as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the difficulty there is, it's a bit like not discussing with your partner if you want to have kids before you get married. Like, he's now in this situation, and there can be a non-alignment between misalignment between co-founders. I mean, obviously, ideally, if you're talking to a new founder, you want to have those discussions up front and beforehand in terms of what your expectations are, so that you can align them before you actually get into the business. If you're now in the thick of things and you are starting to diverge in terms of your needs and your requirements because you have different situations, that's then something that you have to sort of negotiate and sort of re-look at together, and hopefully come to some kind of agreement around what you can do now and in the sort of medium term. Obviously, that's also very dependent on who your shareholders are. I mean, have you bootstrapped this? Have you got shareholders? And how much flexibility you have around that. But like Paul was saying, I mean, there's also that Noam Wasserman book, Founder's Dilemma, and he sort of whittles your core motivations down to money and control. He sort of starts there, like, are you trying to control this business long term because you have lifestyle plans or whatever it is for it, or are you just trying to extract as much money out of it in whatever period of time that is, and then you define that time period. So there are ways to try and think about that beforehand, and obviously, if you haven't done so, a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, and look, I think where we got to in that conversation was also exciting, because it's like, look, it makes an easy decision if you're going to pay yourself more. If you're bringing outsized value to the business, no one's going to debate that. And actually, there's just no limit to that. There might be a limit in our minds as to what's possible, and certainly there might be market pressures. But making it an easy decision for other founders and shareholders is probably the exciting challenge that he kind of left with. So that was a pretty good session.
Yeah, but I mean, different people need different things. I mean, I've been working with one founder, and she was taking quite a high salary. Some of the investors weren't too happy, and she just said, listen, this is what I need. Like, this is my family situation. This is what I've got. This is what I'm paying for. And I have to have this minimum salary just to make it work. And eventually they just conceded, and they said, okay, like, we want you as the CEO. We want you to carry on doing this. You're doing a great job. Like, normally we wouldn't want to pay a founder that much money, but that's what we need to do for this business.
Yeah, we had a similar conversation around this the other day, and I think to what Brett initially mentioned, like, actually understanding one another's financial positions before getting involved is like really important, because there's been stories of like very unexpected surprises, negative surprises as a result of not having that conversation. And then ensuring that there is that constant just transparency around one another's positions, because the odds of different partners having different lifestyle requirements or financial requirements can be the case. That just not speaking about it is the first problem. And similarly, we also had a conversation around just like being clever with tax. It's a common topic that comes up, and there are a bunch of legitimate business expenses that you might be incurring, and we look at this to see how you can manage that effectively, which can ultimately also soften the blow in terms of financial needs and how to approach that. But I think the one thing that I've also learned in my journey is to be very consistent and cognizant of recognizing that the business and you are two different living entities. And the business has its needs and has its capabilities, and so do you. And if you're not prepared to pay yourself, like, the business needs to afford it on its own. And if it can, obviously doing this with like a risk mitigating mindset and not putting the business under pressure. But in the end of the day, like, I fell into the trap at one point of like the business and me being like one entity. And only when I got out of it did I realize that it was like completely wrong. But I have felt since then, like, viewing the business as its own breathing entity that has its own affordability ratios separate to me, like, really helped just put things in perspective.
I wanted to just share one topic that has been something that I've observed a lot, shifting slightly now to this thing of what I notice is that the forums with members with 25 million annual revenue and above tend to be happier people, not only because they're probably getting to the point of paying themselves well, but they always have teams around them to handle the stuff that they're not good at. That I find the early stage entrepreneurs feel very burdened because of the many hats problem. And I just wanted to share to anyone listening that the thing that our group really got to was that as an early stage entrepreneur, you have to have a list of the very next thing, and it can be a micro thing that you're going to be delegating, because we kind of get stuck in just doing and not realizing that there's actually a $2,000 a month solution to save you 5 hours a week on something. And there's people out there willing to take on that small task and do it with pride. And it can be such a relief. And really to get into this habit of, as quickly as possible, focusing on the things that we are passionate about and energized about. That was a takeout. And then to end today's podcast, I have one question that has occurred quite a few times, and I want all of your guys' opinion, which is, what percentage of time should a founder be spending on sales? And I want a percentage, I want a number, please, and then we'll get into a quick response after that. What's your number, Ryan?
At what stage?
Oh, Brett. Okay, 2 stages. 20 million and under, you get 2 numbers. Okay, Brett, 20 million annual revenue, Rand, and 20 million annual revenue and above. 2 numbers, below and above.
Sure. I would say the earlier stage guys should be spending at least 40 to 45% on sales and growth activities. And bigger than that, I'd probably drop it down to about 20, 25.
Paul?
Yeah, I think it's context dependent. Wrong. I know it's the wrong answer, but basically, like, if you're a co-founder team and you are the business guy and you've got a tech co-founder, close to 90% should just be sales. You should just be selling in the early stage. Like, that's the game. And then the other answer is that, is it the biggest blocker in the business? Like, if your business is like, if sales is an issue and you've got a wait list, well, no, you need to spend your thing. So I do like, as a prioritization framework, what is the number one thing blocking it? And if it's sales, you should be spending all of your time on sales. If you're 20 million plus, probably the big problem you need to solve is how do you bring in your first salesperson and get that working, because usually that becomes the big blocker. The founders are stuck in sales at the 20 million plus, and they're unable to do that hard hire of handing over the sales the first time. So solve that.
Okay, so
that was quite a clever answer.
Similar on the first side. Sorry. Yeah, so I'd say similar on the under 20, like 80%. If you haven't operationalized sales by the time you're over 20, I think you've done something wrong. So then I think you need to really work on operationalizing and building a cookie cutter system. Because if you are one of those sales founders who are the magic of your own business, then you're going to be working in your business and not on your business for the rest of your life, and it's never going to scale. So if you can't get it down to 30% at the higher levels, and I wouldn't say less than 30, and I'd stay there and I'd stay in the market until you get really to 100 plus, and you've built out product development and product management, and you've actually got product managers taking over the role of being the expert in the problem that you're solving, and really spending a lot of time with customers. So as long as you're still the expert on the problem, not less than 30. And then
well, I
after
think that
it
is a
can
challenging, those numbers are going to be challenging to a lot of listeners who are running their businesses on less than 45% or less than 30%. And I hope it's a good challenge. And we had Mike Scott come, he came in, but he posted on LinkedIn recently, the sooner you start to fall in love with the selling challenge, because there's so many elements to it that need to be mastered, the sooner you can get to that liberation, let's say, where the business isn't so dependent on your particular founder magic. And with that, we're going to call it a wrap. Guys, thanks so much for your awesome insights. Until next time, thanks for listening, and keep up the compounding, and let's get those AI tools rocking and rolling, the agents, the robots, but also the people maximally employed. Cool, guys. Take it easy. Ciao.
Cool. Cheers.
Just thanks.